Hello everyone. So today's video is going to be a fictional story, and it's going to be a no sleep story that is written by me. However, it is not narrated by me, like usual. Instead, today we have a special guest narrator, Sir Midnight, of Sir Midnight's World of Horrors. I'm linking to his podcast in the description, and I'm also linking to his YouTube channel. So please be sure to check him out because he does amazing work. Alright guys, so now we're going to get into the story, and I do hope you enjoy. I will be trying to post more fictional stories onto the channel, in addition to my true stories, which I know a lot of you guys like a lot. So, today we're going to enjoy this fictional story, and when we come back next time, I'll have 2 new cold cases that I plan to cover. So until then, please sit back, relax, and enjoy. I think I discovered a theme park's horrible secret.
Out of fear of reprisal, I never went public with what I saw at Thrilling Journeys Park. I'm a coward, I know, but I'm not even sure who to report this to. I can't say for certain if I really did see what I think I saw, or if my conclusions about it are actually correct. Maybe if you hear the full story and why they're after me and my son, you'll understand a little bit better. That is, if you even believe me. Being a single father is hard. I thought taking my son on an outing to Thrilling Journeys Park on one of my rare days off work would make it just a little bit easier. It didn't. Now, if you're from the area or have ever visited the park, you probably know that it isn't exactly kid-friendly, being mostly populated with high-intensity roller coasters. But Michael, my son, had expressed the desire to go for a long time. I told him it wasn't a very fun place for a 6-year-old boy, being filled with mostly scary grown-up rides, but that didn't deter him. He was absolutely enchanted by the colorful ads on TV. So, naturally, when I finally decided to take him, he shied away from every ride, even the select few kiddie coasters. I was about to accept that we'd just have a nice stroll through the park for the day, a bit of a waste of my money, but it'd be worth it if Michael was happy, when my son all of a sudden pointed out one attraction that I'd forgotten the park even had. It's called A Monster of a Picnic, and it's a boat ride with animatronics. During the ride, you embark on a journey to a land filled with monsters who want to host you for a picnic on a summer day. It held the distinction of being the only non-thrill ride at the park. I honestly always thought it was a little creepy. The ride was probably the oldest at Thrilling Journeys. It remained open for years for 2 main reasons. First, it still saw traffic in the evenings from people looking for a place to relax after spending all day on roller coasters. Second, it actually made the park quite a bit of revenue. The monsters in the ride were the closest thing Thrilling Journeys had to mascots, and people were always happy to buy copious amounts of merchandise featuring the monster characters from the ride's adjoining gift shop. "Can we go, Daddy? Please?" I was hesitant. I'd only been on the ride a couple times, and I remember that while its first half was a little uncanny but pleasant enough, the second half was absolutely terrifying. In the ride, you would first encounter happy, silly monsters, and then you would transition into the Forbidden Swamp, where you came face to face with evil, terrifying monsters. They even had human skeleton props strewn throughout the swamp section, as if to drive the point home that you were supposed to be in a dangerous territory. "I don't know, buddy," I said to Michael. "I think that one's a little scary." "I'm okay with scary," Michael said. "I just don't like fast and tall. This one doesn't go fast, and it's on the ground." I couldn't really argue with that. I sighed. "Well, if you're sure," I said. I supposed it was true that Michael didn't really mind scary things so long as if it didn't involve him flying through the air. The kid loved horror flicks, but couldn't stand heights. I hoped we'd get through the ride no problem, but part of me expected Michael to cry or beg for us to get off. I walked closely behind him as he gleefully ran to the entrance. There was no line. This was expected. The ride's gift shop was far more popular than the ride itself. It also tended not to see riders until near the end of the day, as I said. The boats were all queued up next to a facade that resembled a sunken antebellum house, and a rather crude mural featuring an assortment of monsters with colorful fur, all smiling with pointy teeth. Happy, jazzy music was playing. We began our journey by passing through a brick tunnel and into the monster world. Michael was practically bouncing up and down with excitement. I couldn't help but grin. We were greeted by our first animatronic, a southern belle type by the name of Miss Vivian. A slender, Medusa-like creature dressed in an elegant white dress, she stood on a staircase in a flooded living room set. "Hey there, y'all!" she greeted us, moving jerkily, looking every which way with her fluttering mechanical eyes. "Welcome to our picnic! We're so very happy to see y'all! Sure do hope y'all have a fun time, and oh, one last thing, stay out of the swamp!" I don't know if Michael heard that last part. He seemed to be too excited to join the picnic to care even remotely about whatever swamp Miss Vivian was talking about. On we went through a pair of doors, and suddenly we were gliding through a set made to look like your typical public park, only populated with monsters. Bubbles drifted from the ceiling, water fountains spouted, multicolored lights flashed playfully amid the darkness. A band of monsters, scaly and furry, tiny and huge, played another jazzy number for us as we passed. More animatronics sat on grassy mounds, moving robotically, flying kites, sitting on picnic blankets, eating oversized turkey legs, and overall, enjoying a summer day. We often got a little too close to many of these scenes, practically bumping into the sets. We passed by a monster who was basically all lips, stationed at a kissing booth, making kissing noises. There was also a monster with a glowing red mouth participating in a chili eating contest. That was cute. I glanced over at Michael. He was positively enthralled. No tears yet. Eventually, though, it came time for the scary part. A monster sheriff with an oversized badge and a wide-brimmed hat popped up, standing next to a cop car with flashing lights. Wait, now where are y'all going? Stay out of the swamp! Stay out of the swamp! No! We found ourselves awash in sudden darkness. Ominous noises sounded and we heard sinister cackling from the wicked monsters we were about to face. "Alright, bud," I said to Michael. "Ready for the scary part?" But Michael didn't answer. Was he so frightened he couldn't speak? I reached over. A parent's worst nightmare realized. "Michael?" I shouted. He was gone. Had he fallen out of the boat? I panicked. I couldn't see anything. The loud cackling from the evil monsters seemed to mock me. I nearly stood up but quickly sat back down once the boat started rocking. "Stop the ride!" I thundered to whoever could hear. "Stop the fucking ride! My son fell out of the boat!" I knew Thrilling Journeys wasn't Disney or anything, but I figured they'd at least had a system to monitor the ride. It seemed otherwise, though, as I continued on the ride path. Through the darkness, red lights illuminated goblin and lizard-like monsters sitting upon piles of treasure, pointing at me in contempt and snarling at me with hatred as the boat sailed on. Embedded in the piles of fake gold coins and jewels were the infamous skeleton props. "Human," a monster seethed at me. His eyes, too big for his small reptilian head, bulged outward. They were completely white and glowing, no pupils at all. They appeared soft and moist, almost organic. His body was covered in coarse black fur. He sported tall, crooked horns, resembling those of a stag. His long talons curled around the ribcage of one of the skeletons, his unfortunate victim by the looks of it. The darkness and flashing red lights made the figure appear to move more fluidly, as if it were truly alive. To hell with it. I tore my eyes away from that cheap, janky robot and jumped out of the boat. The water was shallow, perhaps 3 feet deep. As I suspected from how we bumped into 1 or 2 displays, the boats were not on any chain or track, but were propelled by an artificial current that thankfully wasn't too difficult to resist. "Michael!" I screamed, wading through the water as fast as I could and heading back in the direction we came. "Michael!" Before I could scream his name again, the lights switched on. Thank God. It was about damn time. I'd just gotten back to the sheriff animatronic. Michael was standing on one of those grassy mounds next to the cop car. He didn't look scared, bothered, maybe. Guilty, definitely, but not scared. He was completely dry, and not a scratch on him. "Michael!" I cried in relief, wading over to him. I climbed onto the grassy mound, knelt down, and started busily inspecting my son for injuries. "Are you hurt?" I asked frantically. Michael shook his head. He told me, "No," in a small voice. He didn't seem to want to meet my eyes. "Michael," I said sternly. "Michael, what happened?" I just didn't want to do the scary part," he confessed. I stared at him, dumbstruck. Then I sighed deeply. I wasn't the suing type, but for this I could make an exception. It was ridiculous how incredibly easy it was for a child to simply exit the boat and just waltz onto the set. Who designed this death trap? I was surprised more kids hadn't been crushed by a boat or concussed by a monster's swinging robotic arm. "I know it was scary, Michael, but you have to stay in the boat at all times, no matter what," I told him. "I'm sorry," he said, and he sounded like he meant it. "Can we finish the ride now?" I sighed again. "No, Michael," I told him firmly. Are you mad?" His voice was a little unsteady. "No, I'm not mad. I really wasn't. Not at him, at least. I searched for an exit, the ones you see in every one of these rides that break the immersion to let you know where you can get out in cases of emergency. Surprisingly, there weren't any to be seen. Maybe they were further down, or the morons who designed this place were even more reckless than I thought and never put them in." "Maybe we should go see the man?" I looked down at Michael and frowned. "Man?" I asked. "What man?" "There was a man who found me. He told me to stand by the police car and wait for you." None of this made sense. "And where'd he go?" I asked curiously. If it was an employee, why hadn't he waited with Michael? Had he left to turn on the lights? Michael pointed to a curtain of fake Spanish moss hanging from the ceiling behind the sheriff animatronic. "He went back there," he said. Curious, I brushed the fake Spanish moss aside, and sure enough, there was a long hallway behind it, with a set of doors at the end. The hallway was plain, cold, and industrial looking. Almost certainly the passage to a behind-the-scenes area of the ride. "I think we'll have a talk with this man," I said. Told Michael to take my hand, and together we walked down the hall. When we got to the doors at the end, I pushed them open. They weren't locked as I half expected. We entered a warehouse-like setting, where bits and pieces of animatronics lay in messy piles on workbenches and even on the floor. We saw half-finished figures, their faces attached but their steel and wire skeletons perfectly positioned in some of the same happy, playful poses as the monsters on the ride. I grimaced. I didn't want to look at Michael's reaction to the magic of the animatronics being suddenly exposed as a sham, but he didn't ask questions. He was a sharp kid. He probably knew it was all pretend. Before we could investigate any further, we suddenly heard quick footsteps and an official-looking man in khakis and a red polo came before us. "Oh, hello, sir," he said quickly. "I see you found your son." "Yeah, no thanks to you," I snapped back. "What the hell do you mean, leaving him out there by himself?" "I'm sorry, sir, but we couldn't have him back here. It's too dangerous. Too dangerous? And leaving him out there by himself in the middle of the ride isn't dangerous? Sir, I understand you're upset, but we can't have people back here. Now, please, if you'd like, I can escort you to an exit. I didn't see any exits back there, I said quickly. Is there not one back here? The man raised his hands as if telling me and Michael to step back. He started walking forward as if to push us out the doors we came through. He seemed to be attempting to block something from my sight. Sir, you have to leave now, the man insisted, gritting his teeth with impatience. I peered over his shoulder. I thought I could see what he was possibly trying to hide from us. A giant tank of sorts, like an aquarium almost, filled with some sort of clear liquid. Just as the man was about to force us out of the room, someone else came walking by. A stone's throw away from us, close to the strange tank. This new man, dressed in some kind of orange protective suit, stopped before the tank as if to inspect it. Then he turned around and talked to someone hidden behind a pile of animatronic parts. The first one's almost done, it looks like, he told this other person. Hurry up so we can get that one out and this one in. The man he was talking to emerged from behind the scrap pile. The man in front of us trying to push us out suddenly froze. His eyes bulged. Beads of sweat appeared on his face. I craned my neck. Michael ducked down to take a look and gasped. I guess his friend followed him to go looking for his wallet. The third man presented himself, also clad in protective gear. He sounded almost sad. It didn't seem real. He was carrying the dead, limp, badly bruised body of a teenager in his arms, maybe 16. The teen's limbs were mangled and twisted, resembling bent and gnarled branches. His neck seemed like it was snapped, hanging lamely in an unnatural position. Yeah, it's a crying shame, the man next to the tank said impatiently. Now let's get this one in and the other one out. Suddenly, both men near the tank seemed to notice our eyes on them. They froze, shocked. Their mouths hung open. Something in the tank floated into view. Get out! The man in front of us roared. You didn't see a thing, not a damn thing! He pushed me hard, nearly sending me to the floor. He practically kicked Michael, who scurried away in terror, cowering behind my leg. He began to cry. I scooped him up and ran the hell out of there. Tell anyone and you're dead. You hear me? You're fucking dead. He definitely meant it. Michael and I haven't left the house in days. Soon I'll likely pull him out of school. He wants to go out again, brave little guy, but something tells me it's too dangerous. I have no formal diagnosis, but I wouldn't be shocked if I now have PTSD. The world is now simply too much for me, and I can't have my son parading around in it. Not when those schools potentially want our heads to make sure their secret never gets out. I've done a lot of research since that day. Thrilling Journeys is involved in an open missing persons case involving 2 teenagers who were last seen at a Wendy's with their friends. Their friends reported that one of these boys wondered if he lost his wallet on the park's Mind Warp roller coaster after a day of fun. It's been theorized that they drove back to the park to look for the missing wallet at a time of night when the park was closed. It wasn't difficult for me to put 2 and 2 together. Perhaps they wandered onto the tracks in their search. Perhaps the hapless staff were doing a test run of the ride at the exact moment. They didn't want to be implicated in manslaughter, and besides they had to liven up their merch-producing, money-making monster ride with new props somehow. Like I said, I don't know if that conclusion is correct, but I can't see any other explanation. Maybe my eyes were fooling me. Maybe it was all some strange daydream Michael and I shared that day. The kid is tough as nails. He can handle anything. I think he was bothered more by the angry, mean, yelling man than by what we saw in the tank. Try as I might, I can't forget that tank and what could be inside except some sort of acid. Hydrofluoric acid, something like that. Had to be. I'll never be able to get the image of that skeleton out of my mind. Floating so ghost-like and peacefully in that giant tank, hidden in that godforsaken ride.